Shabbat Shalom. Good evening, good afternoon, or good morning, depending on where you are on the earth. Where my friend Kyra is, it is 9 a.m. Correct? It's 9 a.m. in Malaysia, and it's 9 p.m. here in Washington D.C. Tonight we're going to be beginning a new study. So we had just completed last weekend. We completed our study in the prophecy of Isaiah, otherwise known as Yeshaya, and what a blessing it was studying that prophecy and letting that book speak to us. We praise the Most High, for it told us what was already past, it told us where we are now, and it tells us the future, as all prophecy does. And now we're going to go through the same thing in the prophecy of Daniel, and Daniel's going to also tell us things that have already passed. It's also going to show us things that are now, and it's also going to show us what we can expect in the very near future. Shabbat Shalom, Junior. And so praise the Most High Yahweh. We are beginning that study tonight. And let's look at it first. Let's start in 2 Chronicles chapter 36. 2 Chronicles chapter 36. 2 Chronicles 36. Excuse me. And this was basically the end of Israel being a sovereign nation in control of itself. Chronicles 36. After this, Israel would always have another country controlling them. Okay. Actually, it had started before this, but this was the first destruction of the Israelite temple, and also the destruction of the entire city, as it had been prophesied, as they had been warned by the prophets of Yah about, and unfortunately the prophecies came to pass as Yah had spoken. Shabbat Shalom, Josie, Jamar, Shabbat Shalom to all of you. So let's go to 2 Chronicles 36 so we can look and see. Well, before I do 2 Chronicles 36, because as most of you or many of you are aware, maybe you're not aware, the nation that was given, the land that was given to the children of Israel initially as they came out of Egypt, and over a 40-year period traveled and wandered in the wilderness until they actually crossed the Jordan, and by the power of the Most High Yah took the land that was promised to them. At that time, they were one nation, Israel, the sons of the children of Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel. But then, over the course of time, the kingdom was divided. During the reign of Solomon, or after the reign of Solomon, actually, the kingdom was divided. And you had 10 tribes that made up what was called the northern kingdom, and 2 tribes that made up what was called the southern kingdom, or called Judah. So you had Judah and Benjamin that made up one kingdom, and the other parts made up what's called the northern kingdom. And the capital of the northern kingdom was headquartered in the tribe of Ephraim. And the reason that's the case, was the case, is because initially, when the children of Israel crossed the Jordan and took over the land of Canaan, initially the Ark of the Covenant was in Ephraim. And the reason is because Joshua, or Yahushua, who was ordained by Moses from the Most High to lead the people into the land of Canaan after Moses was put to sleep, he was from the tribe of Ephraim. And so, being that he was the one that was having direct communication with the Holy Father, with the Heavenly Father, and the Father was using Joshua as he had used Moses as an intermediary between himself and the nation, the Ark of the Covenant went to where his tribe was, Ephraim. And it settled in a place called Shiloh. And it was there for over 400 years. It was there for over 400 years. Actually, it was there for over 400 years, actually. And so once David became king, David was impressed by the Spirit of the Most High to move the ark to the area of Jerusalem. Okay, and David did that. And so but then there was always animosity between Ephraim and Judah. And that's why in several prophecies, which we will cover, you will see that the Most High mentions that in the new kingdom, there'll be no more animosity between Ephraim and Judah, because that's how it started, because the Ark of the Covenant was taken from Shiloh and brought to Jerusalem. Okay. So at that point, there were two kingdoms. And the northern kingdom was settled in Shiloh, and the southern kingdom was settled in Jerusalem. Now, the captivity of the northern kingdom came first. And that's why, like, when you get to the New Testament, they're called everybody, the word in the Greek they use is Jews. They use the word Jews, but that word is short for Jew in English for Judah, because that was the only kingdom that was left. Because the northern kingdom had already been scattered, separated, and lost. Okay, but the Most High promises that He's going to bring back the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, the actual blood, because all of them are bloodline of Abraham, Isaac, and of course Jacob. So here I want to show you first what happened with the northern kingdom, which actually was about 500 to 700 years before the scattering of the southern kingdom. So let's the final scattering of the southern kingdom. So let's take a look first in 2 Kings chapter 18. And it started off with some promise because of King Hezekiah. But let's take a look. 2 Kings chapter 18. I'm going to begin at verse 1. And of course, I like to point out, not only is this historical stuff that's already happened, but the spirit of it is present. Okay, and we're gonna see how that works in a minute. Okay, so in a few minutes. So let's start at 2 Kings chapter 18. I'm going to begin at verse 1. And I'm going to go from verse 1 down to verse 3. Okay, 2 Kings chapter 18 from verse 1 to 3. Now it came to pass in the 3rd year of Hoshea, the son of Elah, king of Israel, that Hezekiah, the son of Ahaz, king of Judah, began to reign. 25 years old was he when he began to reign, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Abi, the daughter of Zechariah. And he did that which was right in the sight of Yahweh, according to all that David his father did. And this is not unusual. You have in the book of 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, they outline when a king took the throne, how many years he took the throne. Okay, and if you notice, he was 25 years old when he took the throne. He reigned 29 years, which means he died at age 54, very young. And this was not unusual either, that the kings started dying young. Okay, I guess the life of power and prosperity, was not good for their health. But anyway, they died young, and he also died at age 54. Now, let's continue. Let's look at some of the works that he did as king. Beginning at verse 4 and 5. He removed the high places and brake the images and cut down the groves, break in pieces the brazen serpent that Moses had made. For unto those days the children of Israel did burn incense to it, and he called it Nehushtan, which means a piece of brass. And he trusted in Yahweh, Most High of Israel, so that after him was none like him among all the kings of Judah, nor any that were before him. So what happened now? So you see that he made reforms. Okay, because the serpent that they were talking about here, hold on, the serpent that they were, hold on one second. I'm going to read this, but it's not what I actually wanted. I'm going to read this, but it's not what I actually wanted. Hold on. Not what I actually wanted. Hold on one second. I started to read something, but I didn't. That's not what I wanted. That's not where I wanted to go. That's not what I wanted. Hold on one second, brethren, because I started to read something I didn't want. I don't want that. That's not what I wanted. I'm sorry. I wanted 2 Kings chapter 17, but let's look at chapter 18 anyway. Let's look at chapter 18 anyway, just for a few minutes, because I believe I was led here for a reason. So anyway, Moses was told to build or to make a serpent of brass. Why was he told to make a serpent of brass? The reason he was told to make a serpent of brass was because the children of Israel, while they were in the wilderness, started complaining and murmuring against the Most High. Now, why were they doing that? He was providing for them bread and water, but they were still feeling a little hungry. He was testing them. He was testing them. As a matter of fact, let's notice what it says in Deuteronomy chapter 8 with regard to that. And like I told you, this is past, but it's also going to be present and future. That's how prophecy works. Notice again in Deuteronomy chapter 8, we're going to come right back there. Deuteronomy chapter 8. Now I know why the Most High let me hear. Deuteronomy chapter 8, beginning at verse 1. And I'm going to go from verse 1 down to verse 3. Notice what it says, verse 1 down to verse 3. All the commandments which I command thee this day, Moses says, ye shall observe to do, that ye may live and multiply and go in and possess the land which Yahweh sware unto your father. And thou shalt remember all the way which Yahweh thy Most High led thee these 40 years in the wilderness, to humble thee and to prove thee, to know what was in thy heart, whether thou wouldest keep his commandments or no. Watch verse 3. And he humbled thee and suffered thee to hunger and fed thee with manna, which thou knewest not. Neither did thy fathers know, that he might make thee know that man doth not live by bread only, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of Yahweh doth man live. So he was actually letting them be a little hungry. He was giving them bread. He was giving them water, just what they needed, no more. So they feel a little hungry. And then they started murmuring, complaining. And they were complaining about Moses, and they were complaining about Aaron. And so snakes, he allowed, they were in the desert area. So snakes had not been coming messing with them before. But then poisonous snakes started coming among them, and some of them started dying. And Moses pleaded with the Most High, and the Most High said, because they was whining. So this is what I want you to do. Make a serpent of brass and put it on a stick. And when they are bitten, if they look at the serpent of brass, they'll live. The poison won't kill them. And Messiah would later say, as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up. Right? So the children of Israel would get bit by snakes, and when they would look at the serpent of brass, they would not die from the poison. So Messiah is saying, as the children of Israel looked at that serpent, so must the children of Israel look at him, who's going to be lifted up, so that sin will not kill us. Okay, we'll overcome it. And so what happened after that, years went by, they kept that serpent of brass as a token, but then many centuries later, they started worshiping the brass serpent. They started worshiping the brass serpent. And so Hezekiah came along and destroyed it. Can you imagine how they felt? They're worshiping this thing. When he said they lighted incense to it, let's go back to 2 Kings chapter 18. In verse 4, and he removed the high places and break the images and cut down the groves and break in pieces the brazen serpent that Moses had made. For unto those days the children of Israel did burn incense to it. They started worshiping that serpent, which goes to show you what we end up doing when we take our eyes off of Yah and off of his commandments. What do you think Christians do? Don't they worship the cross? Don't they? Aren't there crosses like on every building they make that they worship in? If Hezekiah destroyed this serpent that was actually used to heal people, what about these wooden crosses? Or these crosses people put around their neck? It's the same thing. It's the same thing. And what would people think if I walked up and took one of them crosses and just broke it up? They get upset at me, right? If I had one in my hand, I just broke it up. Oh, it's holy. What you doing? That's a sacrament. That's how they thought about this brazen serpent. But the thing is, Hezekiah was the king. Okay, and what point was he making? He said, Nehushtan. It's Nehushtan. It's just a piece of brass. It don't mean anything. because they had lost the point of what it was supposed to mean. The point it was supposed to mean was that serpent represented your sin. And he was putting up a sacrifice for your sin. But they started worshiping the serpent. Okay? So he had to destroy the serpent. That idolatry, that habit of idolatry, all mankind suffers from. All mankind suffers from it. The first commandment given to the children of Israel, the first one, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. Nothing. We serve a living and invisible Most High. That's who we serve. We don't serve pictures of Jesus, whether he be mostly the white one or even a black one. We don't serve any pictures of Jesus. We don't light any candles to that. Okay, that's idolatry. Shabbat shalom. Okay, so, but that idolatry, first of all, you can see the children of Israel were prone to it, but it wasn't just them. Once the gospel went out in the first generation and the second generation, the apostles and those that followed the apostles died. By the time you got to Constantine, quickly it went to idol worship. And that's where we got Christianity from. That's where we get saints. That's where we get lighting candles to these saints. That's where we get a pope from, who calls himself Holy Father. That's why you got a stone in the middle of Saudi Arabia that everybody comes and bows down to. That's idol worship. Straight, period, simple. According to the scriptures that we're reading here. Okay, that's idol worship. Right? So this was taking place in the southern kingdom. This was taking place in the southern kingdom. Let's look at the northern kingdom and see what happened there. Okay, that's where I wanted to go in the beginning, but the Most High had me go to chapter 18 to go over that first. And it fits, because when we're going to look in Daniel, that same idol worship is what got them in captivity in Daniel. Okay, so let's take a look at the northern kingdom here in 2 Kings chapter 17. Okay, let's take a look beginning at verse 1. And I must read from verse 1 down to verse 4. In the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, came Hoshea, the son of Allah, to reign in Samaria over Israel 9 years. Now, Samaria is in Ephraim. Okay, that's why when the woman at the well met Messiah, he said, our father Jacob worshiped in this mountain. That later became where the tribe of Ephraim was. Okay, and he did that which was evil in the sight of Yahweh, but not as the kings of Israel that were before him. Against him came up Shalmaneser, king of Assyria. And Hoshea became his servant and gave him presents. And the king of Assyria found conspiracy in Hoshea, for he had sent messengers to So, king of Egypt, and brought no present to the king of Assyria as he had done year by year. Therefore, the king of Assyria shut him up and bound him in prison. Okay, you see what's going on here? So you have this king, Hoshea, in the northern kingdom of Samaria. He was already under the control of the Assyrian king. And when it says gave him gifts, he paid him taxes every year. He had to pay taxes to the Assyrians. Okay. And then in order to try to relieve himself of the Assyrian oppression, what they do? They sent messengers to Egypt to ask for help from Egypt. The Assyrian king found out about it and came to the northern kingdom and snatched Hoshea and put him in prison. Okay, let's continue. Verse 5. Then the king of Assyria came up throughout all the land and went up to Samaria and besieged it 3 years. In the 9th year of Hawashad, the king of Assyria took Samaria and carried Israel away into Assyria and placed them in Halah and in Abor by the river of Gazan in the cities of the Medes. And so it was that the children of Israel had sinned against Yahweh their Most High, which had brought them up out of the land of Egypt from under the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and feared other gods. Again, our fathers started worshiping other gods. It's not complicated. And when you start to see these things, you will understand it's not complicated. What is complicated is the world system of Babylon that we're in, and all the religions and all the gods people worship. And in order to bring everybody together, what Asatan has done is he has told everybody, whether you Catholic, whether you Muslim, whether you Protestant Christian, whether you Buddhist, whether you Hindu, whether you Taoist, no matter what you call your God, we all serve the same God. That's what he's told everybody. Okay? And everybody's bought into that. Why am I saying now that is an absolute falsehood? Let's explain. The Catholics, they call the Pope Holy Father. Okay? They have priests that are originally from the tribes, from the sons of Yafet. In fact, that whole religion originated with Yafet. Okay? Then there were Protestant reformers that broke off from there, called Protestants, and they're now called evangelicals. And so you got different ones, the Jehovah's Witnesses, who say that their God is Jehovah, and they got a watchtower, and they keep Sunday, and they say pork is good to eat. The Baptists, who believe in baptism by water, keeping Sunday, and white Jesus. The Seventh-day Adventists, who have Ellen White as their prophet, they will tell you that. And then they believe that because they keep the seventh day, they're the true remnant Christian church. Then you got the Mormons, who say white Jesus came to them in Utah and told them that they were the Christian church and that they need to wear this funny underwear. And they got this man named Joseph Smith that had like 70 wives, including many that were under 14 years old. Now, all these people serve the same God. That God must be confused. Why can't he tell them all to do the same thing? Why can't he tell them all his name? Why they all serve him differently if they all serve the same God? He must be a confused God. Then the Muslims say, we serve one God, and we bow toward Mecca, this square stone in the middle of the desert in Saudi Arabia, 5 times a day. Why didn't he tell everybody to do that? How come the Mormons don't do that? How come the Muslims aren't worshiping white Jesus and Joseph Smith? How come the Baptists are not listening to Ellen White? He must be a confused God. He must be confused. Do you understand? There's but one God. And he only chose one people. Throughout the whole planet, one people. And he gave them his name. Moses said, when I go to the children of Israel and tell them, the God of your father sent me, what shall I call him? What is his name? He said, I am that I am. That is translated Ahaya, Ashar, Ahaya. I am that I am. What does that mean? It means I exist. Ahaya, I. Yahweh, Ahaya, Yahaya, Ahaya, I exist. I exist. Then later, he explained to Moses. He said, your fathers called me Al Shaddai. That's how they knew me. He said, but by my name, Yahweh, I was not known to them. So some people get confused. Well, is it Ahaya or is it Yahweh? What is it? And that's silly. If you just simply look it up, it's in this concordance right here. Just look it up. It's all in there. It's in there. I believe it's let me just see. I believe it's 1920 and 1933, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just look here. I mean, it's not that complicated. I'll tell you why in a second. It's not that complicated. And y'all gotta be careful, people that are trying to bring confusion to the movement that's going on now to make y'all argue with each other about these silly things, man. You know what I'm saying? No. Okay, yeah. 1933 says higher. Okay, higher. Okay, and then 1961 says higher. Well, why do they say the same thing? Let me explain. Ahaya means I exist. First person. I'm talking to you and I say, I exist. Y'all got that part? I exist. Okay? So Yahweh means Yah exists. I'm talking to you about me in the third person. Yah exists. And then Psalm 68, verse 4 says his name is Yah. And you can see that in all the names they call it. It starts with Yah. The one we call Joshua, his original name was Hawashah, which what we would call in English Hosea, like the book of Hosea. That was his name, Hawashah. And then Moses changed his name, said, your name's not Hawashah anymore. It's Yah Hawashah. Because Hawashah means exist to save. Yah Hawashah means Yah exists to save, which is the name of his son, Yahweh. Okay? Ahaya, I exist. Yah Hawa, Yah exists. Same thing. So now he's telling Moses, I exist. That's who I am. I exist. Then he said, by my name, no, Yahweh, Yah exists. The same thing. One, he's speaking of himself in the first person. One, he's speaking of himself in the third person. Okay? And the word Yahweh, which is YHWH, that's in the New Testament more than anything, any other name. I mean, the Old Testament. That's in the Old Testament more than any other name. Every time you see Lord in capital letters, that's Yahweh. See? That's not hard, is it? I don't think it is. But anyway, so you got all these different gods. The Baptists worship a God, the SDAs worship a God, the Catholics worship a God, Jehovah's Witnesses worship a God, the Muslims worship a God, the Hindus worship a God, the Buddhists worship a God, the Taoists worship a God. And they all different gods. So Yah says to his people, thou shalt have no other gods before me. And how do we know who he is? He said, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of the covenant that he gave only to the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He wasn't talking to Babylonians when he said to them, and they all heard him say, I am the Lord thy God, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt and out of the house of bondage. He wasn't talking to everybody when he said that. Not the whole world didn't hear his voice at that moment. It was just the 1,000,000+ people out there around Mount Sinai, 1,000,000+ people outside of Mount Sinai. There was no microphone either. And it was so loud, they asked Moses, please go up there, tell him to stop because his voice is going to literally kill us. Because he made sure they all heard. No other people have ever dealt with that before. No other people before or since. The only times people heard the voice of Yah were the children of Israel. First there, and then when Messiah was baptized, this is my beloved son in whom I am well pleased. Who was there that day? Israelites. They're the only people to ever hear his name from his mouth. They're the only people to ever receive his covenant written by his own hand. Moses didn't write it the first time they got it. It was written by the hand of God. Moses didn't write it and bring it to them. It was written from the thunder and lightning. Boom! After it was spoken to them. That's what's the sign. They're the only people on the earth that he has chosen. And he has chosen them. Their mission is to present him to the entire earth. That's their mission. And until they fulfill that mission, this earth is going to be in a miserable state. That's why it's in a miserable state now, because we have not fulfilled our mission. And guess what? It's going to get fulfilled. We're going to talk about this. We studied the book of Daniel. It's going to get fulfilled. Okay? It's going to happen because he said so. And he has said everything that we've seen so far. That's the thing about the Bible. Everything that we are seeing right now has been written. He has shown us the past, he has shown us the present, and he has shown us the future. He's not like, Nostradamus, 10, 15% accurate. Ellen White, maybe 20% accurate. Joseph Smith, maybe 15, 20% accurate. No. Yah's 100% accurate. 100%. Problem is that people don't believe it, but that doesn't mean it's not true. I could say the sky is purple. That don't change it from being blue. Okay, let's continue. 2 Kings chapter 17. Let me begin at verse 7. And so it was that the children of Israel had sinned against Yahweh their Most High, which had brought them up out of the land of Egypt from under the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and had feared other gods, and walked in the statutes of the heathen, whom Yahweh cast out from before the children of Israel and of the kings of Israel, which they had made. The children of Israel did secretly those things that were not right against Yahweh their Most High. And they built them high places in all their cities, from the tower of the watchman to the fenced city. And they set up images and groves in every high hill, under every green tree. And there they burnt incense in all the high places, as did the heathen, whom Yahweh carried away from before them, and wrought wicked things to provoke Yahweh to anger. For they served idols, and whereof the Yahweh had said unto them, ye shall not do this thing. Yet Yahweh testified against Israel and against Judah by all the prophets and by all the seers, saying, turn ye from your evil ways. Keep my commandments and my statutes according to all the law which I commanded your fathers, which I sent to you by my servants the prophets. Notwithstanding, they would not hear, but hardened their necks like the neck of their fathers, they that did not believe in Yahweh their Most High. And they rejected his statutes and his covenant that he made with their fathers, and his testimonies which he testified against them. And they followed vanity and became vain, and went after the heathen that were round about them, concerning whom Yahweh had charged them, that they should not do like them. And they left all the commandments of Yahweh their Most High, and made them molten images, even 2 calves, and made a grove, and worshiped all the host of heaven, and served Baal. And you know what Baal means, right? Baal, that means Lord. Baal is Lord. That's where you get it from. Look it up. Baal is Lord. That's why we don't call him Lord. That's Baal. He gave us his name. Okay, you want to call him Yahweh? Go ahead. But still it's Yah, isn't it? Yahusha, okay. Yahuwah, okay. It's still Yah, isn't it? But it's not Baal or Lord. They caused their sons and their daughters to pass through the fire, and used divination and enchantments, and sold themselves to do evil in the sight of Yahweh, to provoke him to anger. Therefore Yahweh was very angry with Israel, and removed them out of his sight. There was none left but the tribe of Judah only. Also Judah kept not the commandments of Yahweh their Most High, but walked in the statutes of Israel which they had made. And Yahweh rejected all the seed of Israel, and afflicted them, and delivered them into the hand of spoilers, until he had cast them out of his sight. And he rent Israel from the house of David, and made Jeroboam the son of Nebat king. And Jeroboam drave Israel from following Yahweh, and made them sin a great sin. For the children of Israel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam which he did. They departed not from them, until Yahweh removed Israel out of his sight, as he said by all his servants, the prophets. So was Israel carried away out of their own land to Assyria unto this day. And the king of Assyria brought men from, well, okay, we got that. So the northern kingdom was carried away by the Assyrians. Okay, some years later, let's go now, 2 Chronicles chapter 36. Now, keep in mind, in spite of all this, the Most High had promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, I'm going to have your seed. I'm going to have your seed is going to serve me, and we're going to have a kingdom of your seed. Told him that. He told David, your children are going to be in the kingdom, my kingdom, forever, he said. Keep in mind, he promised that. Why can he promise that in the midst of all we see here? What we must understand is when the Most High says he's the beginning and the end. When he says he's the beginning, in the Greek is the Alpha and Omega. When he says he's the Alpha and Omega, right? That means he is present. Listen now, he is present in the past, he's present in the now, and he's present in the future, all at the same time. And when he speaks a word, listen now, when he speaks a word, all nature in the universe begins to work to fulfill that word. All he has to do is speak it. So no matter what you see in the interim, at the end, it's going to be exactly as he says it's going to be. Okay? So Abraham was faithful to the Most High. Isaac was faithful to the Most High. And Jacob learned through his trial and his struggles to be faithful to the Most High. But their children, ooh. So he has to spank their children to get them in line. That's why we are where we are right now. That's why we are where we are right now. See what I say when I say it's in the past, but it's also right now. And we praise the Most High. Daniel's going to show us a whole lot more. A whole lot more. A whole lot more. Praise the Most High. Okay. Second Chronicles chapter 36. Second Chronicles chapter 36. I'm going to begin at verse 11. Second Chronicles 36, verse 11. Notice what it said. Zedekiah was 21 years old when he began to reign, and reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. And he did that which was evil in the sight of Yahweh his Most High, and humbled not himself before Jeremiah the prophet, speaking from the mouth of Yahweh. And he also rebelled against King Nebuchadnezzar, who had made him swear by the Most High, but he stiffened his neck and hardened his heart from turning unto Yahweh Most High of Israel. Moreover, all the chief of the priests and the people transgressed very much after all the abominations of the heathen, and polluted the house of Yahweh, which he had hallowed in Jerusalem. And Yahweh Most High of their fathers sent to them by his messengers, rising up betimes and sending, because he had compassion on his people and on his dwelling place. But they mocked the messengers of the Most High, and despised his words, and misused his prophets, until the wrath of Yahweh arose against his people, till there was no remedy. Therefore, he brought upon them the king of the Chaldees, who slew their young men with the sword in the house of their sanctuary, and had no compassion upon young man or maiden, old man or him that stooped for age. He gave them all into his hand. And all the vessels of the house of the Most High, great and small, the treasures of the house of Yahweh, and the treasures of the king and of his princes, all these he brought to Babylon. And they burnt the house of Yahweh, and brake down the wall of Jerusalem, and burnt all the palaces thereof with fire, and destroyed all the goodly vessels thereof. And them that had escaped from the sword carried he away to Babylon, where they were servants to him and his sons, until the reign of the kingdom of Persia, to fulfill the word of Yahweh by the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land had enjoyed her Sabbath. For as long as she lay desolate, she kept Sabbath, to fulfill 70 years. Let me stop right there. So here was a 70-year prophecy of their captivity in Babylon. Now it sounded really bad, right? I mean, that was really bad. They destroyed the city, destroyed the temple, took all the gold vessels out and brought it to the house of his god, Nisra, over there in Babylon. And then took whatever wasn't killed, took it into captivity in chains. As I said before, the children of Israel have been in chains several times in history. It's one of the signs of who they are. In chains. There's only one group of people that have been in chains several times in history. There's only one group of people that have been in chains around their neck as a people several times in history. And you know by that chain that, those are the children of Israel. Look at them in chains again. Even to this day. They call it prison and chain gangs now. So now, 70 years was this prophecy, and this was bad. But as we're going to read in the book of Daniel, what's going to cause Daniel to be sick and faint is the Most High is going to show him another period of captivity, a period that over 2,000 years. So if they thought 70 years was bad, period of 2,000 years, can you imagine? The fortunate thing is, you and I are living at the end. See, Daniel would love to be where we are. We're at the end of the 2,300-year prophecy. We're past it, actually. And I'll tell you why, even though we're past it, we're still in this situation when we get to that point in the book of Daniel. We're not there yet, but I'm just giving you a little highlight. 70 years was just the warm-up. See, they was like 200 years in Egypt. I know people think it's 400 years, but the 400 years actually started when Isaac was born. After Isaac was born, the Most High told Abraham, your seed, that's Isaac, was his seed. Your seed is going to be strangers in the land that's not theirs. So in other words, the land of Canaan where Isaac and Abraham and then Jacob dwelt, they were strangers in that land that wasn't theirs officially. The Most High promised it to them. Okay, and then through the course of time, they went into Egypt, and we know they went into Egypt and they came out, and the whole time was 430 years. And most people don't understand that it's 430 years, and that's the same as the 400. And the reason it's 430 years, because a child is not counted upon the population until it's age 5, according to Leviticus. It's not counted among the Israelite population until it's age 5, when it's weaned. That's when children were weaned back at that time. Okay, so Abraham left Ur the Chaldees at age 75. 25 years later, his woman, his wife, Sarah, had Isaac when Abraham was 100. Remember, he was circumcised when he was 99. Sarah had the child when he was 100. That's 25 years. 5 years later, they celebrated because Isaac was weaned. Okay, that's 30 years between when Abraham left Ur the Chaldees to when Isaac was weaned. And he told him, your seed is going to be a stranger in a land that's not theirs. That's Isaac, that's Jacob's sons, okay, for 400 years. That's why when they came out of Egypt, it said 430 years. Most people think that that means the United States, but I'll tell you it's not. And I'll tell you right now, I'll give you a hint. It's based on the fact that the prophecy of our captivity was not 400 years where we are. It was 2,300 years. Okay, it was not 400 years. And you can even know there were slaves in Brazil before us. There were slaves in Jamaica before us. There were slaves in Hispaniola before us. There were slaves in Puerto Rico before us. There were slaves in all these places before us. Even though the United States is a central hotspot in the Bible prophecy, we're going to talk about that too. But it's a 2,300-year prophecy for us. And take comfort. We've already passed the time. That means we're in overtime right now. But it's planned. Don't worry. It's all planned. We're at the end right now. Okay? Imagine Daniel, though. When he was told this, it hadn't even started yet. He was still in the 70-year part. Okay? He was still in the 70-year part. And so that's why he was sick when he found out. We're going to go into that. Okay? So here, we go to Daniel chapter 1. And now this is the setting. So now they have been taken captive. They have been taken captive. And according to the prophecy that was told to Hezekiah, Hezekiah was told by Isaiah that his children, his grandchildren, and his descendants were going to be eunuchs in the Babylonian court. Now, eunuch. What is a eunuch? I'd like to talk about a eunuch for a second because didn't Messiah, y'all remember when Messiah said, right? He said, there are some people that are eunuchs from the womb, right? Then he said, there are some people that are made eunuchs of men. He said, and then he said, there are some people that make themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake. He said, he that is able to receive it, let him receive it. Remember that? What does all that mean? Well, Daniel became a eunuch. That was the one that was made eunuchs of men. That means they cut off his scrotum. He is incapable of having children. That's why you never see Daniel having children. That's why he was the prince of the eunuchs was in charge of him, as we're going to read in Daniel chapter 1. Okay, and he was made to serve the king of Babylon, to be a servant in the king's court all his life. Okay, he was made eunuchs of men. Who are those that are made eunuchs from the womb? Are you ready? Testing 1, 2, 3. Are you ready for me to tell you who the eunuchs from the womb are? I'll give you a hint. Are you ready? The eunuchs from the womb are men that are born and don't have an affinity to a woman. They don't have a natural affinity to a woman. Do you know who I'm talking about? They don't have a natural affinity to a woman. Correct. That's correct. White Falcon, that's correct. That's correct. So somebody would say, well, they're not born that way. Yeah, there are people born like that. See, and somebody said, well, if God didn't make, listen here. The Most High made Adam and Eve, and he made them perfect. Okay, but then they got infected with this disease. See, when you get infected with a disease, is it not possible for you to pass that disease to your children? If you get infected with a disease, can't you pass that genetically to your children? Yes, you can, right? So what disease was Adam and Eve infected by? It's called sin. Once they got infected by sin, the gene pool was polluted. See, the gene pool was polluted once they got infected by sin. And it's affected the gene pool all these thousands and years later. So now you can have a man or a woman born blind, or born deaf, or born without an affinity to the opposite sex. This is part of sin. How do we deal with that? What did Messiah say? He that is able to receive it, let him receive it. If you can't help, you're not attracted to the opposite sex, that don't mean you commit sodomy. Sodomy is a choice. To have a man's penis in your anus, or to put your penis in somebody's anus, that is a choice. You don't have to do that. That is a learned behavior. Okay, so if you want to serve the Most High, and you are born and you don't have an affinity to the opposite sex, that does not mean you lick and suck and do on the same sex. You don't have to do that. You become a eunuch. In the New Testament, eunuch means unmarried person. That's what it means. Unmarried person. Okay, that's what it means. So a person that, no matter what, and people, we are so fleshly today. You look at a person and you see a woman and you say, oh, she's beautiful, she should be with a man. If her spirit is not that way, you shouldn't try to make her that way, because you're going to be disappointed. If a man's spirit is not toward a woman, you can't make him want a woman. You're going to be disappointed. So if you see a beautiful woman or a handsome man and they want to be alone, don't fight them. Don't fight them. Don't argue with them. Don't say, oh, you're so pretty. Oh, you're so handsome. You should be married. No. You know how many problems that has created over time? Gay men trying to appease their family and marrying a woman, and the woman find out later he's having an affair with another man, or a man. And I've known people that went through this. Having his woman and she gay, and he trying to make her straight because she's just too beautiful, and he come home and find her in bed with another woman. Sick world we live in. But there are people that are born eunuchs from the womb. Then there are people that become eunuchs for the kingdom's sake. What's that mean? Paul was a eunuch. He never married anybody. Why? He was dedicated to the work of the kingdom. He had given his whole spirit and life to the work of the kingdom. And he died a eunuch, beheaded. Okay, that's how he died. Okay, because he was dedicated to the kingdom. Okay. Praise the Most High. So Daniel was made a eunuch of men. Let's read it. Daniel chapter 1. Daniel chapter 1. Going to begin at verse 1. Going to begin at verse 1 and go down to verse 7. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem and besieged it. And Yahweh gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, with part of the vessels of the house of the Most High, which he carried into the land of Shinar, to the house of his God. And he brought the vessels into the treasure house of his God. And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel and of the king's seed and of the princes, children in whom was no blemish, but well favored and skillful in all wisdom and cunning and knowledge and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning in the tongue of the Chaldeans. And the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing them 3 years, that at the end thereof they might stand before the king. Now among these were the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave names. For he gave unto Daniel the name Belteshazzar, and to Hananiah of Shadrach, and to Mishael of Meshach, and to Azariah of Abednego. Lots going on here. You think the first time we got our names stolen was when we came here to America and they started naming us Smith and Jones, Powell, Robertson, Jefferson, and Washington? No. Babylon did it. Okay, but the difference between them and us, that only lasted 70 years. During the whole 70 years, they knew who they were. And not all of them was made eunuchs, obviously. The Most High would not allow that. Daniel was, but not all of them was. So they 70 years later, when they were sent back to the land by Cyrus, the Persian king, they had families that they had in Babylon. They brought everybody back, blah, blah, blah. And they knew who they were. They knew who their names, original names was. They knew who their families come from. They knew they can go all the way back to Moses. They can go all the way back to Abraham. They knew the tribes. They knew who they were. We are not so. Don't get it twisted. We are in the worst captivity the Bible ever talks about. The worst one. We're the ones that would say, I'm going to scatter you and I'm going to make your remembrance to cease. We're the ones that he said, I'm going to let the Edomites and the Ammonites and all of them, I'm going to let them hide you. You're going to be the hidden ones. That's why somebody tried to tell you, you're not an Israelite unless your father is an Israelite. That is false. Why is that false? You know how many white men have raped our women over the last 2,000 years? Do you? Do you understand that? That every one of us got European blood in us? That we've been mixed with these people? Not by our own choice? Do you understand that? When the Bible says the house of your fathers, let me just explain that to you. When the Bible says the house of your fathers, that's what it says. He said he told Moses, tell them, number them by the house of their fathers. What does that mean? That's the 12 tribes. That's what it means. The house of your father. Like, are you from Reuben? Are you from Simeon? Are you from Levi? Are you from Judah? That's the house of the fathers. Not your immediate father. It's what tribe you're from. But you see, brothers and sisters, we don't even know what tribe we're from. We don't even know. Now, we can guess because the last captivity was Judah, right? That was the last captivity. And they went into Africa, what's now called Africa. That was also named by a Caucasian man. That wasn't the original name of that land. Africanus named it. Y'all shouldn't get caught up in Africa as far as the name. That name came from European too. Okay, look it up. I think an Englishman gave it that name. But anyway, we scattered into that land. Okay, and a lot of our tribes, like even to this day, we know the Lemba tribe. We know the tribe in Nigeria. We know the tribe of the Ashanti in Ghana. We know they came from the children of Israel. We know that, but they don't know their original names. And then we were taking them now. We call Smith and Jones. We don't know which of us is Judah, which of us is Benjamin, which of us might have been Levi. We don't even know. All we know is we're descendants of slaves. That we know. That's what we know. Because a lot of us can go back. Like I could go back to when my father's father, well, his mother's mother left the plantation. I could go back to Florida to that. I can go back to my grandfather, my great-grandfather, my great-grandfather when they were Maroons. I could go back to that. I don't even know their names then. But I can go back to that. See? So I knew they were slaves. And a lot of us could do that. And that's the sign. We are, they call it African descendants of slaves. They took us off the coast of that land called Africa. But we're not really African. We really Israelites. And the Bible tells us in Isaiah, look, we studied this in Isaiah not too long ago. Isaiah chapter 44, that as we are awakening, certain things are going to happen. As we are awakening, notice what it says, Isaiah chapter 44. Let's go to verse 1 and go down to verse 5, okay? Especially verse 5. Notice what it says here. Yet now hear, O Jacob, my servant, and Israel, whom I have chosen. Thus saith Yahweh that made thee and formed thee from the womb, which will help thee. Fear not, O Jacob, my servant, and thou Jeshurun, whom I have chosen. For I will pour water upon him that is thirsty, and floods upon the dry ground, and I will pour my spirit upon thy seed. That's us. And my blessing upon thine offspring. That's us. What we going to do then? And they shall spring up among the grass as willows by the watercourses. Watch what happens in verse 5. And one shall say, I am Yahweh's, and another shall call himself by the name of Jacob, and another shall subscribe with his hand unto Yahweh and surname himself by the name of Israel. Why would we have to surname ourselves? Because we don't forgot our names. Like we know our name was not Smith and Jones. We know that slave master's name, but we don't know our names. They was changed. Like look, even the series Roots showed you that. His name was Kunta Kinte, right? And his name got changed to Toby. And then he had to fight. They cut off his foot. They beat him to make sure he called himself Toby. That's Isaiah chapter 44, verses 1 to 5, Nigel. Isaiah chapter 44, verses 1 to 5. So now we don't know what tribe we have an idea. We come from the southern kingdom of Judah. That's pretty strong because of the last captivity coming out of the Roman Empire. But as far as what our names are and his exact tribe, we don't know. Now we're going to know. The Most High is going to reveal this to us because it's about him. It's not about us. When his spirit is poured on us, he's going to reveal everything to us. And that's why another place in Isaiah says, I think it's Isaiah 48, that when there's the resurrection comes and some of our fathers are resurrected, we're going to be introduced and they're going to say, how are these my children? Where they come from? Because we're going to be relatives to people that's from the past that gets resurrected, and they're going to see us and they're going to say, oh, you from my tribe. You come from my family. Imagine that. Imagine that. Woo, man. Imagine that. Praise the Most High. Okay. Brennan Yacovetti. This is the time of Bible study. I do Nicks, and you know what? People can come and go as they please. And like I tell people all the time, listen here. I put up what I'm convicted to put up. You don't like it? It's fine. You can go. Like a lot of things you could do on a Friday night instead of being here. There's a lot of things you can do on Friday night instead of being here. You know what I'm saying? So it is what it is. So anyway, so now Daniel and them, when they came, they knew their real names. So even though the Babylonians changed their names to Belteshazzar, to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that's all good because Daniel and them knew what their real names was. They knew what their real names was, right? So that wasn't going to change by the virtue of the fact that the Babylonians. Daniel also understood Jeremiah's prophecy. So when Daniel is being taken captive into Babylon with his three friends, they knew that there was a time limit. They knew this was going to last 70 years because Jeremiah had already prophesied it was going to last 70 years. So they knew that. And Daniel actually confesses that in Daniel chapter 9. He says he knew by books that it was 70 years. So they knew how long this was going to last. Now, us, where we live, we're not told how long it's going to last. We're given signs, which we're going to talk about as we go further into the book of Daniel. We're given signs. The Bible doesn't give us an exact year. It just tells us that 2,300 years are going to go by, and then the sanctuaries start to be cleansed, and we're going to talk about that. But we don't know exactly when the kingdom's going to come. Well, now that we're getting closer, he's showing us some things. We'll go into that. Yeah. As we're getting closer to it, he's revealing things to us. And as we get more close, he's going to reveal more. He doesn't reveal it to us all at once, right? He shows us little by little, and he's showing us things. Like right now, we do understand that the Messiah's return is going to be at the time of the Feast of Tabernacles, which is in the autumn of a year, whatever year that is. We don't know, what year it is yet because he hasn't revealed that to us, but he's going to when it's time. Okay, but we know it's in the autumn. by the feast. We understand that, okay? So, and we also know that there's a Jubilee coming up in 2027 in the 7th month in the 10th day of the month, according to the Hebrew calendar in 2027. We know that that's coming. Now, whether that's the actual time of the return or soon after that, we don't know yet, but we're going to find out. People are going to find out. He's going to reveal stuff to us as we need to know. Okay, that's what he does. So that's why we know it's soon. It's very soon. We know that. Okay, he's showing us things little by little as it's time he reveals stuff to us. All right. So we see that Daniel and his 3 friends were eunuchs, and that Nebuchadnezzar told the captain of the eunuchs, I want you to train them in our language, train them in the worship of our gods, train them in our science for 3 years. In other words, they were going to college, right? They were going to college, they were going to Babylonian college to learn how to serve in the Babylonian system. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? Because all of us do that. All of us do that now, don't we? All of us do that. So they went to a Babylonian college to learn the language of the Babylonians, to be able to serve the king of Babylon in the Babylon court. Okay. And so they were going to be tested. They were going to be tested at the end of the 3 years by the king himself. So obviously the eunuchs was under some pressure to make sure that these boys were prepared, because the king himself is going to question them. Okay. So let's take a look. Daniel chapter, and this is why today's teaching of Daniel chapter 1 is called Bearing Witness in Babylon During Captivity. Bearing witness in Babylon during captivity. Okay. I'm not going to tell y'all that it's, you understand if I say we need to bear witness in Babylon during captivity. Y'all understand that, don't you? We need to bear witness in Babylon during captivity. You understand that, right? Okay. All right. I just want to make sure. All right. So now let's start at verse 8. Right? Let's read verse 8. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore, he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. And this is important, brothers and sisters. So the Israelites were given a diet. They were given things to eat and what not to eat. And they were told even how to prepare it. In other words, they were told that the meat that they were going to eat, that they were allowed to eat, should not contain blood, and they should cut out the fat from the internal organs. They were not to eat the internal organs. In other words, we're not supposed to be eating the liver of an animal, or the stomach of an animal, or the lungs of an animal. You're not supposed to eat those parts. The Bible tells them to take that out of the animal, and the fat that covers it, they were supposed to use. They could use it for lighting. They could use it for other stuff, but they were not to eat that fat that covers the inward parts of the internal organs. All right. Then they were told what parts of the other parts, the shoulder, the thigh, the breast, they could eat that. And they were told to make sure the blood was out the animal, to drain the blood. Don't eat the blood. Okay, they were told not to eat the blood of the animals that they told you. And why? Let's take a look at that. Book of Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy. Chapter 14. Deuteronomy chapter 14. Now, first, the reason they were told not to eat certain things. Deuteronomy chapter 14 from verse 2 and verse 3. Deuteronomy chapter 14 from verse 2 and verse 3. For thou art an holy people unto Yahweh thy most high. Yahweh has chosen thee to be a peculiar people unto himself above all the nations that are upon the earth. Thou shalt not eat any abominable thing. Then he goes on to tell them what not to eat. Among that, of course, is the swine. We're not supposed to eat the swine. He actually says, let the heathen eat the swine. See, that's why we eat chitlins. You know why black people eat pork? Do you know in Africa we did not eat pork? We did not eat it in Africa. Why we eat it now? Because when we came here, the people that had us in chains, they ate pork. And they would take the best part of the pig, the shoulder, the breast, the thigh, and they would give us the intestines, where the doo-doo is, and the internal organs. They give us that to eat. And we created chitlins out of it. We created that. Okay, and because that's what they gave us to eat. Now, when you're starving, you're gonna eat that stuff because you're hungry. Master wasn't actually gonna spend much money on you. You eat what's left over from his table. You understand? That's how that went. All right. So then it became like a tradition for us. We started eating chitlins even after they took the chains off our neck. In fact, we got so good at making chitlins, even Caucasian people like the chitlins. Because we made a cuisine out of it. But now that we're awakening, should we still be eating chitlins? I don't think so. Should we be still eating the swine? Not when we're awakened. No, we shouldn't. Because why? Yahweh have chosen thee to be a peculiar people unto himself above all the nations that are upon the earth. So now we are still in captivity. We're not in our own land. We're still under a Babylonian system, but by eating the right thing, by serving our God, what are we doing? We are being obedient and we are bearing witness while we're in captivity in Babylon. Does that make sense? We're bearing witness while we're in captivity in Babylon. And that's why in the book of Acts, chapter 15, they tell the converted Gentiles, they say, don't eat blood, don't eat anything strangled, don't eat anything offered to an idol, because it was already understood they weren't going to eat the things on this list if they were going to be grafted into the olive tree. The olive tree is the nation of Israel. They're going to be grafted into the olive tree. Okay, you're going to be grafted in, fine. You're going to eat these foods, and you're not going to eat blood. That means the Gentiles prior to this, and even now, Gentiles will make blood. You ever heard of blood sausage? They still have that. And a lot of times people like to eat their steak. How do they like to eat it now? Most people like to eat it how? Come on, child. Talk to me. Like rare? Isn't that correct? They want to see the blood. The Bible tells us not to eat the blood. Don't eat the blood. Make sure the blood is out. How do you do that? Well done. And then what my wife does when we get meat, she always boils it. She always boils it first, because that's how the children of Israel used to get it. It's to be boiled in a pot before they cooked it, because the blood comes out. Okay. When she gets chicken, we get beef or whatever we get. First, we try to get it kosher all the time, organic if we can, and then we boil it. Make sure the blood comes out. Then, and what she does, she puts she puts apple cider vinegar on it first, and then she boils it, and all of it comes out, and it comes out tender. If you don't do that, it could be hard. Just telling y'all. But she puts apple cider vinegar on it, and it tenderizes it. She's something else, man. Most High blessed me with that woman. So she takes the blood out first, right? She tries to get the blood out, and that's what you're supposed to do. All right. So yeah, Daniel decided. So apparently, the Babylonians did not follow this health program. Okay, the Babylonians did not follow this health program. They must have had some other program. And Daniel decided, I'm not eating that. Daniel decided, I'm not eating that. He purposed in his heart, I'm not eating that. So now, Daniel chapter 1, now the Most High blessed Daniel so that the king and the master of the eunuchs favored him, blessed him with favor. You know what favor is called in the New Testament? What is favor called? It's called grace. It's called grace. So the Most High gave him grace in the sight of the Babylonians that was in charge of him. The Most High did that. And notice what happened. Daniel chapter 1. We start again. Let's read verse 8 and verse 9 and verse 10. Okay. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore, he was being polite about it. He requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. So he said, look, this is not what we're supposed to eat. I'm a Hebrew. I'm not supposed to eat these things. Can we do something else with this menu? And he was polite about it, gentlemanly, right? It's like with the Sabbath. The Lord, the Most High has blessed me. I said, Lord, excuse me. Yahweh has blessed me so that I've been able to keep the Sabbath now for, since 1983. What's that? 37 years? 37 years. I've been able to keep the Sabbath, and I've been have many jobs. And but when it comes to the Sabbath, when somebody ask me, can you come in this Saturday? I would say, it's against my religion. It's against my beliefs to come in on Saturday, to work on Saturday. As a matter of fact, just give you a quick story. I was working as a branch manager in a bank for a few years. And how I started in that bank, I started off as a personal banker. So I went to this particular bank and I was a personal banker. Now, I did not know when they hired me, when I interviewed, they did not say to me, you needed to work on Saturday. Matter of fact, they asked me on the application, what days do you work? And I said, Monday to Friday. So when I got hired, my boss, my manager was a woman, and she's like, when you're not working Saturday? And I said, when we interviewed, you never said anything about me working Saturday. I said, on my application, it asked me what days I should work. And I said Monday to Friday. If it wanted me to work Saturday, you should have said that, because I wouldn't have took the job. Well, she said, I'm going to have to call HR. I said, well, you call HR. I said, because I'm not working Saturdays. Sorry. And I was polite. I said, sorry, it's against my religion. Then they'll ask you something like this. They'll say, what church is it? I said, it's not a church. I'm an Israelite. See, I used to say a church when I was with the SDAs, but I've been gone from them for a while now, maybe like 10 years, but maybe longer than 10 years. But anyway, since I've been awakened, I say I'm an Israelite. What church is that? They say, we'll need a letter from your pastor. I say, I am the pastor. I can give you a letter. And I try to be nice about it. So she said, I'm going to have to call HR. And I knew what was going to happen because I was telling her the truth. I mean, on the application, it asked me what days I'm available to work. And I said Monday to Friday. And so HR told her that. That's exactly what it says on this application. So yes. So then she came back at me and she said, this is not going to work out. She said, this is not going to work out. She said, you're going to have to go somewhere else. She kept trying to pressure me. So I told her, I said, okay, I'm going to look for something else. So within that bank, I started looking. And I didn't know what to do. I wasn't really worried because I just felt like the Most High was going to take care of me. But it was a Sabbath afternoon, and I'm in Washington, D.C. So I decided to get up and go for a walk and just explore around Washington, D.C. on the Sabbath afternoon. Because at that time, my wife and children had not moved up yet. I was setting up everything ahead of them. So I walked through downtown Washington, D.C., and I noticed the same bank that I worked at, I saw branches. And all the branches were Monday to Friday only. I noticed that on the thing. I said, oh, shoot, they are. So then that Monday, I started calling, applying for jobs at these different branches in D.C. And so he said, oh, yeah, all the banks in Washington are closed on the weekends. See, they had me in Arlington, Virginia with this woman. So then I said, okay, so then within 2 days, I think I called on Monday. By Tuesday, people will call me for interviews. So I came in, met this guy in downtown, and man, we hit it off right away. And he said, I want you. So I came and I went to downtown Washington. And she was like, oh, yeah, good, because you're not going to work out, blah, blah, blah. Well, what ended up happening, I became the manager, right? And my branch became the number one branch. Every branch they put me in, the Most High blessed it. So that everything, branch might have been underperforming, but Most High bring me there, it became number one. I'm not even lying. They came number one. So my manager, the area manager, now he's manager the whole DC area. He came to me and he said, listen, I got a branch that's got problems. I want you to go over there and take care of it. So I said, well, what branch is it? He said, it's in Arlington. Arlington. I said, them branches open on Saturday. He said, I know about your religion. He said, you will never have to work on Saturdays. You just make sure you set the schedule so other people do it. He said, well, what happens if we need you on Saturday? I said, unless it's life or death, I ain't coming. I said, if somebody dying and I need to get there, I'm going to come help. If somebody's dying in it. I said, but if it's just about the money, no, don't call me. I said, you can't even reach me because I'm not going to answer the phone. He said, all right. He said, he said, you got to arrange everything. I walked back. It was the same branch that the woman told me it's not going to work out. It was the same branch that she tried to call HR and get me fired. I became the manager of that branch. And within 6 months, that branch was number one. And I didn't want to stay there because I had people that I was assigning to work on Sabbath. I wasn't coming in, but I didn't want to even do that. So I was asking, man, send me to another branch. Get me back to DC, So he did. He sent me to the hood in DC. But even, and I'll tell you what, that's the most fun I ever had. That's the most fun I ever had on a job. He sent me to the hood in DC in his branch. We actually got robbed at gunpoint one time. Where I'm trying to tell you, I had more fun in that branch, and that branch became number one. So my point is, I was polite. I wasn't trying to argue with them. I wasn't trying to fight with them. I came to them and I said, listen, I said, this is my religion. I'm an Israelite. So I'm a Sabbath keeper. I keep the seventh day. So then it ended up working out. See, that's how Daniel, that's how I got him. Daniel said, he came and he requested, listen, I don't want to eat this. This is against my religion. I'm an Israelite. I know I'm in Babylon, but I'm an Israelite. So now let's see what happens. Daniel chapter 1, verse 8, verse 9, verse 10. Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore, he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Now, the Most High had brought Daniel into favor and tender love with the prince of the eunuchs. And the prince of the eunuchs said unto Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who hath appointed your meat and your drink. For why should he see your faces worse liking than the children which are of your sort? Then shall you make me endanger my head to the king. So he's telling you his problem. He said, listen, man, I don't mind you not eating this food if you don't want to, but if you look sick and I bring you before the king and tell him I wasn't feeding him what he gave me for you to eat, he's going to cut my head off. So Daniel said, okay, let's fix this. We got 3 years. Let's settle this business right now. So Daniel was wise by the grace of the Most High. Remember, said he lacked wisdom. The Most High giveth liberally to anybody that lack wisdom, and he upbraideth not. So Daniel's in a situation. He needs wisdom. Brothers and sisters, listen here. All of us going to be in situations. All of us have been in situations. Isn't that right? Decisions we make often determine outcomes. So how we know we're going to make the right decision? Ask the Most High for wisdom. He give it to you. Wisdom is a spirit. Okay. Problem is some of us try to make decisions before we consult the Most High for wisdom, or we try to make decisions out of anger, out of haste, out of desire, and all of a sudden we get messed up. Right? I've done it many times. I know exactly what it is because I've done it many times. End up on the backside all the time making decisions when I should have just asked for wisdom. He would have got it. See these gray hairs, man. I had to learn that the hard way. Don't be like me. Learn now while you get chance. Ask him for wisdom. He will guide you in the way you should go. Okay. Daniel chapter 1, verse 11. Then said Daniel to Melzar, whom the prince of the eunuchs has set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, prove thy servants, I beseech thee, 10 days. Let them give us pulse to eat and water to drink. Then let our countenances be looked upon before thee, and the countenances of the children that eat of the portion of the king's meat. And as thou seest, deal with thy servants. So he said pulse, that means vegetation. It doesn't tell you exactly what vegetation it is, but he's telling them basically give us a vegetarian diet for 10 days. And we'll show you, basically telling them what to give us. Give us this vegetarian diet, give us fruits and vegetables and nuts and grains and beans for 10 days, and then you test us against the other ones. Now, let me tell you something. Later on in Daniel, you are shown that Daniel did eat flesh. Eventually, he did eat flesh. But you can assume that eventually the Babylonians knew how to prepare the flesh the way Daniel needed to have it. But at this stage, just to be safe, he's telling them, give us vegetables, give us vegetation. And so the Most High bless the food. See, when you eat according to his desires, when you eat as he's telling you to eat, he promises he's going to bless your food and your water. It could be bread, whatever he's telling. So Daniel's case, it was vegetation. The Most High was going to bless that food. Because why? Because Daniel was standing firm on principles and statutes that was given to his fathers from the Most High. The Most High is going to get honored in this, therefore he's going to bless us. Okay? Same with us. When we consult him with wisdom and make decisions based on his glory, because that's what this is about. It's not about my glory or your glory or the name of any church's glory or any denomination or any camp. It's for Yah's glory alone. And when it's for his glory, he's going to bless it. Okay? So let's take a look. Daniel chapter 1. So now 10 days, verse 14. Verse 13 and 14. Then let our countenances be looked upon before thee, and the countenances of the children that eat the portion of the king's meat. And as thou seest, deal with thy servants. So he consented to them in this manner and proved them 10 days. 10 days ain't no time in 3 years, right? So you could do this test for 10 days and let's see what happens. And at the end of 10 days, their countenance appeared fairer and fatter in flesh than all the children which did eat the portion of the king's meat. Thus Melzar took away the portion of their meat and the wine that which they should drink and gave them pulse. So Melzar said, oh man, take it all away. Let's give them what Daniel's eating. Because Daniel's healthy. Daniel and his crew, they're healthy. They're healthier than the rest of y'all. Give them their stuff. So the Most High blessed his food. He blessed it, and it caused them to be blessed in their health. Praise the Most High. Okay. Verse 17. As for these 4 children, the Most High gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom. And Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. Now, at the end of the days, at the end of the 3 years, that the king had said he should bring them in, then the prince of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar, and the king communed with them. And among them all was found none like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore stood they before the king, and in all matters of wisdom and understanding that the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and the astrologers that were in all his realm. And Daniel continued even unto the first year of the king Cyrus. So Cyrus was the king, the Persian king that sent them back home. Okay, so Daniel died, but see, brothers and sisters, I want you to notice that they were 10 times better, not because they had just high IQs. The Most High is blessing them. That's what's going on. As they are faithful to him, even in Babylon, he's blessing them so that the Babylonians can see. This was about a witness to the heathen, so that the Babylonians can see that the God of Daniel is the true God. Okay, Nebuchadnezzar would learn more about this as time went on in the book of Daniel, as we will see. But that's the same. We're talking about bearing witness while we're in captivity. We're in Babylon right now. We're behind enemy lines. And I think in this pandemic and in this economic system where there's many millions of people suffering, they talked about 40 million people going to be evicted. 40 million households going to be evicted from their homes, either by foreclosure or by back rent by the end of the year. And we can see that this is a wicked system. It's a wicked system. It's a corrupt system that we live in. Okay. And so we're in captivity in this system, especially those of us that are ADOS. We did not choose. See, the Irish chose to come here. The Polish chose to come here. The Italians came over here on their own with the boats, right? Came to Ellis Island. The English came here first, right? I mean, and killed the Indians that was already here. But we who are ADOS, we the only people here that were snatched from where we was and brought here in chains. And we are under this system. And we are getting the worst of this system. And the Most High is showing us as we turn back to our God and ask for his guidance by his Spirit, he will bless us and he will cause us to bear witness to the heathen that are around us for the glory of the Most High. That's what this is all about. Okay, and we're going to talk more about that as we go into the book of Daniel. Chapter 2 is going to be very pivotal to a lot of things going forward. Chapter 2 is pivotal all the way to Revelation. Chapter 2 is of Daniel. So we're going to talk about that by the grace of the Most High tomorrow. And we're going to talk about that. So may the Most High bless you. May he keep you. May he cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May he lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. If you have any questions, you can always ask them in the under the what you call it, the comment section of the video. You could always ask your questions in the comment section of the video, and you can reach us there. And then we'll be glad to try to answer. I try my best whenever, even on people that look at the Knicks channel know this too. When I get questions, I try to answer all the questions as much as I can. So I will also try to do that there as well. And I ask that you please pray for me that I be faithful to the convictions the Most High placed upon me. And I ask you that I would pray for all of you, that you be also faithful to the convictions that the Most High places upon you. Okay. Amen.